Kelvin Sampson claims that Houston is the poorest Power 4 program in college basketball. He's right. And he's wrong. And he accidentally just gave away the blueprint for the next 10 years of college basketball recruiting. All right, so let's try and get into the numbers real quick. Houston's athletic department has spent $78 million total, about a third of the University of Texas, and that's department-wide, okay? So they are poor as an athletic department. But the paradox is that Houston has spent $14.6 million on men's basketball this year. That's actually more than half of the Big 12, more than multiple SEC schools, and a $2 million increase from last year. So when Sampson says we're poor, he's not lying about the athletic department, but he's absolutely not talking about his basketball program. The question is, where is that money going? So everyone's focused on Kingston Flemings and Chris Sinak Jr. Those are two 5-star prospects who cost Houston big NIL money. But look at Sampson's roster construction at Houston over the last 3 years. He's been aggressively recruiting internationally. Why? Because the market inefficiency is massive. A top 50 American prospect would command about $400,000 to $800,000 in NIL money. But a comparable international player with the same production and same talent would cost about $150,000 to $300,000. Why? There's 3 main reasons. Number 1, international players don't really have the same NIL leverage networks. No AAU coaches are getting a cut, there's not handler ecosystems, and no hometown bidding wars. Second, visa implications and international transfers create fewer competing offers. Schools have to actually know how to recruit internationally, and a lot of them really don't. And third, these players are hungry in a different way. They're not playing for the, Instagram followers or NBA draft position, things like that. They're really just trying to show that they belong in American basketball. So Houston's poverty is basically just forcing them to hunt where their competition isn't looking. So here's what Sampson isn't saying publicly. It's that the transfer portal is inflating domestic player costs to unsustainable levels. Schools are paying $500,000 for a guy who scored 12 points a game at a mid-major. It doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, the international market is more sophisticated than ever. European leagues, the Australian leagues, they're producing NBA-ready talent now. The smartest programs have built international recruiting infrastructures. They have scouts in Serbia, coaches with European connections, and most importantly, they understand international eligibility rules more than the vast majority of Division I programs. So when Sampson says we have to stop because we don't have the money to keep going at this rate, what he's really saying is we've maxed out our NIL budget domestically, but we're going to go reload internationally at half the cost. And the evidence is right there. They just signed 2 top 30 recruits for 2026. Arafan Dion, the nation's #1 center from Guinea, and Ikenna Alozie, a 4-star guard who's originally from Nigeria. If a roster has to be built under financial pressure, the practical question is, where does the program get the best talent without participating in these auctions? International recruiting often offers a solution to that. And here's just a quick baseline to consider, okay? In Spain's ACB, the minimum annual salary in the league labor agreement lists 18,000 euros for players up to 19 years old, and then 30,000 euros at ages 20 to 21. Those numbers are floors, and top prospects can command a lot more money than that. Still, that baseline explains why US NIL money can be drastically transformative for an international player. A 6-figure NIL package looks a lot more appealing than a 5-figure package staying back in Europe. So 2 important cautions just to keep in mind. International recruiting is not cheap by default, right? There's examples. BYU paid, I think, $1.5 million for Egor Demin, his buyout in Spain. And the second thing is international recruiting is not easy. It requires relationships with people overseas, live evaluation, and compliance fluency. So Houston under Coach Sampson wins with habits, right? The defense that travels, physicality, development, and the role clarity. That profile maps very neatly with the European club pipeline. There's players who grew up in structured systems, there's older freshmen, and prospects whose value comes from feel, footwork, and competing for minutes. Under budget pressure, Houston can prioritize 1 or 2 US must-pays each cycle when the fit is undeniable, multiple international targets when the bidding stays more rational, and developmental bets that Houston's culture is built to cash in. And it's what they've done so well over the years, well before all this NIL stuff. So if you're an AD or a head coach or a program decision maker and you're not developing an international recruiting strategy right now, you're just going to end up getting priced out of your own conference. The schools that figure this out in the next 2 to 3 years are going to have a massive competitive recruiting advantage. The ones who don't will be paying millions of dollars for these portal players while their competitors are constructing championship rosters at significantly less of a cost. And if your program wants to learn how to build this infrastructure, how to identify international talent, navigate eligibility, structure compliant compensation, and build overseas pipelines, that's exactly what I help schools do. Sampson just gave us the playbook. The question is, who's going to use it?